It's a hard one though as well, because you want to create like a life that has that comfort. And then so maybe you achieve your goals, what you set out for there as well. Or even in the process of setting those goals, you said you want to step slightly beyond, but how do you make sure you're not setting wildly unrealistic expectations? And maybe some people can deal with a bigger buffer than others can, because they can deal with stress a little bit better. But is that a massive challenge then as well? Is that those expectations are mildly realistic?
Oh, definitely, and it's going to differ for different people. Obviously, we all have different risk profiles, and we have different. Some people prefer those sort of high energy or high arousal forms more than others, and that's fine. Again, we're all different. But I suppose it's about finding that balance, and I'm not suggesting people should go to that level of that intensity of terror and exhilaration every minute of every day. That you'd burn yourself out very quickly. But it is about doing that at times that are appropriate for you, and in a way that's appropriate for you, and at a level that's appropriate for you, and which again will differ for different people.
Yeah, I find, and it's probably a lot of my listeners would be quite probably more in their 20s or 30s, so they're probably still on that discovery sort of level as well, much like myself, only at 24. And I really struggle with that balance of setting those goals that are realistic, but also you want to like shoot for the moon, but then also I'm like sitting here and I'm like, well, does my life have to be that goal? Should happiness be the goal, or am I trying to pursue something of major purpose, which may mean that, hey, some level of happiness will have to disappear? Like that's, I don't know, like it feels like there's a bit of honor in that, but do I need to do that? Like it's a really hard thing to navigate.
100%, perfect. And that's, in that complex, long-winded question, that's essentially what it's all about. Finding the answer to that. I suppose, like in the personal training, or I go to the gym and exercise regularly, and there's that old saying, no pain, no gain. I like that, but I don't like that. Like I think there's some, but that's kind of what this is about. That there is some pain or discomfort. You need some pain or discomfort to have the gain, to have the joy and happiness. But if you took that into the gym, for example, and if you were just inflicting pain every minute of every day, you probably injure yourself.
Yeah.
So like all things, there's a balance, and you need boundaries around that. And as you quite rightly said, it's not just about feeling good all the time. Any of us, and I'm sure there's everyone to some extent, who's set and worked towards a long-term goal, knows that there's going to be blood, sweat and tears, like literally or metaphorically, that not every, whether you're training for a marathon or a triathlon, or whether you're writing a book or completing a degree or whatever, not every minute of that's going to be fun, and it shouldn't be. Why should it be? But hopefully the end result, that sense of satisfaction and accomplishment, is worth it. So we shouldn't expect to be, or trying to be happy every minute of every day. That would be, it's kind of absurd in a way.
Yeah. And a prime example then there, you've just released a new book. How did you navigate those emotions, the ups and downs of writing that book? Like you said, you weren't happy probably all the time in creating it. How did you navigate that yourself?
Well, that's a good. I actually love writing, so and this is my 7th book, so I'm quite used to the process, and I enjoy the process. So the process of writing for me, to be perfectly honest, it isn't actually that difficult. What is difficult for me is the next stage, the editing process, which I really don't like. I like to get it all down, and I think I'm quite good at that. I send it off, and for those who don't know, it then goes to the publisher and the editors, and and it goes through 2 or 3 iterations, where eventually, so firstly they're sort of looking at the big picture and the structure, and then eventually you get down to like every full stop and every comma. And I don't like that. I hate that level, but it has to be done.
Yeah.
So I suppose for me, that's the pain for me. I mean, people's pain points will be at different stages of that. And then there's also for me, the frustrating stages. So for those who don't know how it works, we finished all this 6 or 9 months ago. And it takes that long for the book to actually come on the shelf. So that's a frustrating process of just waiting for the publishers to go through, do what they do. They have to do, get the cover design and all that stuff. So there's different parts of it that are more frustrating. But I suppose to answer your question is, I just try to see that as part of the process. It's a necessary part, and there are some bits that I enjoy more than others. Just like other people will find that with other goals. There'll be some bits that are they find easy, that are really enjoyable, where they experience a sense of flow, and other bits that are a bit more of a slog. But you can't have the joy without the slog.
Yeah, and I guess the more you do the reps, like you said, it's the 7th book, the more your expectation, like your first book, you may have had an expectation that was going to be perfect, smooth sailing, whatever. Then you get hit with this, we have to do the editing, and there's a level of disappointment potentially there. Whereas now, book number 7, you're like, I know what to expect. It doesn't mean that I don't feel some of those feelings or emotions, but you're a little bit more aware and ready for them then, I guess, as well.
Yeah, and there's a good metaphor in that, which is that which is coming to accept that along with or part of the joy and satisfaction, happiness is frustration and drudgery. That's part of life. That's and again, I think I suppose as I've obviously a bit older than you, but as I've matured a bit, I've tried to. Well, I think I've got better at accepting the dark side within the light, in a sense, because again, if I was to ask someone, are you happy every minute of every day? Is every single second of your life joyous and glorious? And if they said yes, I'd actually be worried. That'd just be really weird. But I think it takes, for some of us, for me anyway, it took a few years, I suppose, to come to accept the realities of life.
Yeah, and I think so. Then part of that, and the common theme here, is you just got to go through it. Like, it's not the avoidance of some of these feelings and emotions. Like, sometimes it's like, let yourself feel those emotions rather than like, okay, maybe I'm sad right now. Don't deliberately make yourself feel crap and feel sad, but be like, well, I'm sad. Like, sit with it, understand it, see what it's about, see what caused it. Maybe there is a way in the future where you could avoid that happening again, because there's a lot of lessons to learn in that. Whereas if you just completely put the wall up and don't get anything out of it, when there's always something to get out of a situation.
For sure. And in fact, as I write a lot about this in the book, and all of that plus more, because what we know is that, so firstly, you just can't not be unhappy. This is, again, it's just impossible for a human being to not be stressed at times, anxious at times, angry at times, frustrated. These are all normal human emotions. So imagining that you won't ever experience that or trying not to experience it is an impossible goal. It's an unrealistic goal. And as you know, if you set any unrealistic goal, you just set yourself up for failure. But more than that, if you try to repress or suppress or deny or fight any of those feelings, what we know from the research, and I write a lot about this, is they actually come back stronger. So the more you push something away, the more it'll push back. So if I'm feeling upset and I try to not be upset, and we do this in all sorts of ways. So we do that through drugs and alcohol. We do that through distraction. So distraction is one of the most common ones now. Even if people are just feeling bored, well, people don't feel bored anymore, because what do? They go onto their screens, and within 3 seconds, you've got all this stimulation, which is good and bad, et cetera, et cetera. But what we know is that it doesn't work. Well, it doesn't work in the long term. It works in the short term. Again, like alcohol, I suppose, you can feel good short term. But obviously long term, there are problems, that can be consequences. And even just with that distraction process, or that trying to take your mind off the distress, it's not going to go away. It's still there, and it's more likely to come back stronger and bigger and uglier tomorrow or next week when you eventually have to face it.
Head over to Jordan Checker Podcast to get the full exclusive experience.